Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the show. Today is the 2nd of April, 2020, Thursday. And I'm glad to have you guys here. Now, here's the thing. The whole world, not just the United States of America, not just here in Canada, not just in Great Britain, but the whole world is starting to crumble apart. The system that they've created over the last 100 years is a system based on debt. And what's happened is in the last 20 years, we've moved into a new era of unsustainability. And not only that, dependency. Everything in the system, every small business, every link in the chain, the food supply systems, everything has interdependencies. So, in other words, the food store that you go to is interlinked with the banking system. And the banking system is interlinked with the Fed, and everything's linked in together, and then they're linked in through multiple chains of being tied into the internet, and they can't do a transaction nowadays. I'll give you an example. Cash registers. The simplicity of the old days, when the cash register used to pull a handle on it and go ka-ching, and it took cash. That's all it took. That's why it was called a cash register. It was a simpler time, a simpler system. And that type of a system is created if there's a failure in the system, you can still do business. In other words, if the power's out, well, sure, you just pull the handle on the cash register drawer, clicks open, and you take cash from the people, or you take coin, and you can still do sales. But they took all those old cash registers out, they smashed them into pieces, little pieces, and they hauled them, carted them off to the salvage companies. And then they replaced them with newer cash registers, like in the 1960s and 70s. These newer cash registers needed to be plugged in to the electrical grid. So suddenly you created a dependency. Now you couldn't do business unless the power was on, or you had a power supply. Oh, but it gets worse. Move forward a few years, and they created new cash registers now that have an RJ45 jack on them that needs to be plugged into the internet, along with being plugged in to the electrical supply. So now they're even more dependent because, heck, even with the cash registers from the 80s and 90s, they threw all those out too. They just needed power. So one could say, well, you could run them off of a generator and you could still do business. Now we've moved into this age where that's not even going to do. It has to have an RJ45 internet connection. It has to have electricity, and the stores. In the old days, you could do business because light would come in through the windows in the stores. Now the stores, there's no light, there's no windows in a lot of them. And you know what? All across America, stores are boarding up their front windows with plywood. They sense what's coming. The system is starting to fall apart. And at a certain point, I know we've made it quite a ways into this, and the government's doing subsidies and everything else trying to keep it running, the system. But the system's starting to fall apart right now. In real time. Look at this. Let's open up the charts right here and take a look at this from Zero Hedge. Look at this. A 2-week sum of 10 million new Americans claiming unemployment. They're unemployed. 10 million people! And this is just a start. Everything's shutting down. And all these businesses are all interdependent. We've created a system with so many interdependencies. Everything's dependent on everything else. And so when one thing fails, it starts a cascading effect. And at a certain point, it becomes unstoppable. So all of their stimulus in the world is not helping the system that's collapsing. But they'll continue to keep trying. They're going to increase the amount of stimulus as they see the system that supports them, keeps them in their ivory tower, as they see the foundation of their ivory tower disintegrating, they're going to go to any extent to try to support it. But all they're doing is making the rich fat cats rich and richer on Wall Street. That's all they're doing. The system itself is Main Street, and it's fallen to pieces. And the little bit of subsidies that they're giving Main Street right now, like, okay, keep your mouth shut, we'll give you $1,200. And then a few months later, we'll give you another $1,200. This is not going to solve the problem. Because when that's all spent, you can't run the entire system by just printing money on a printing press. They're going to learn this very, very soon because the system's starting to disintegrate right now. It's getting ready to come crashing down to the ground. I can't put it any other way, But let's take a look at the markets today and see what's going on with the prices of things. Not that these prices really all together matter that much, but I got to keep a record of this. This is important. These prices we're seeing right here are so manipulated, so heavily manipulated, that the gold and silver price now is broke free and it's found its own level, so to speak, the real physical. And so this price right here does not represent the physical price of gold and silver whatsoever. This is just a made-up price with paper short contracts in the market. So the 1436 for silver today in the spot market. But physical silver, if you actually are lucky enough to have some, is now moving free and it's setting its own price, what you'll have to pay, And it's got nothing to do with this 1436 right here, of the spot market. This is so ridiculous that it's beyond absurd. But it only represents SLV in paper silver contracts. Let's take a look at gold today. 1605, it's up $11.70 on the spot market. Now, real gold, you're going to have to pay a lot more, and that premium is going to go up. It's going to skyrocket. Let's take a look now at cryptocurrency market capitalizations. And it's $185 billion with a Bitcoin dominance of 65.4%. $6,646 for Bitcoin. And so Bitcoin is actually doing pretty good right now. The price is starting to slowly rise a little bit. It's starting to catch a small bid. It's making up some of the ground that it lost, Let's take a look at the Dow Jones Industrial Average. And today, started off the day good, but it looks like it's fallen now. 162 points down, 20,781. Now, I'll tell you about the Dow. The Fed has put a floor under it at 18,000. With all these packages of stimulus and all these stimulus measures that they're doing that are really over the top, they're trying to save the system. If this Dow falls down to 18,000 again, they'll up the ante. They'll put more chips on the table. The Fed will, so to speak. They'll increase the amount of stimulus from where it is even now, if it starts to drop below 18,000 on this Dow. And the question is, will it work? Well, they'll keep adding to it until it does work. Any amount of trillions you can care to name, they'll keep adding more money to it until it does work, until the Dow does respond and keeps above 18,000. That's what's going on right now. They'll do anything to support this market. So let's take a look now at crude oil. Crude oil is up $1.63. ISIS smells some sort of subsidies or whatever. Perhaps the United States might even be the Fed might even be starting to buy massive amounts of oil. Well, they're getting it cheap enough. Right now, oil prices it's like dirt, and so they might be buying. I don't know. I haven't checked into that right now, but something's going on why the crude oil price is rising when people are not consuming it. When nobody's going anywhere, nobody's driving anywhere. Most people's cars, a lot of them are sitting in a driveway, and the thing is oil consumption around the world has dropped off a cliff. U.S. Treasuries today. What we're looking at is falling on the long end of the yield curve and rising on the short end of the yield curve. Let me see. We're looking at 1.2% on the U.S. 30-year and 0.59 on the U.S. 10-year. Talk about a manipulated market. Okay, guys. Right now, it's not scary yet because we've got a little bit of a carryover from things. Things were actually pretty good just before this coronavirus hit. You know, store inventories of everything that you could possibly imagine to buy. Inventories were mostly full and everything. Most people were working. Unemployment was low. Things were pretty good, you know. And now the coronavirus has hit, and it's just like if you got a big engine, you just dropped a monkey wrench down into the gears. That's the effect it's had, you know. And it's getting worse, the effect. And what's happening is because one thing doesn't work, it leads to more things not working, and the system is actually starting to break apart in real time. But it's still got enough momentum from when it was good, you know, just a couple months ago, that things don't seem that bad just yet, like we're going to muddle through this or whatever. But in actuality, everything's starting to come apart at the seams, you know, and that's why all the stimulus from the Fed and everything else, you know. Listen, you guys have a great day. Try to forget your troubles. You know, I mean, that's a hard thing to do. And I understand because I'm right in there in the same boat you guys are in, you know. And this whole thing is hard to ignore. I'm trying to ignore it, but I mean, it's just, it gets in your head, you know, and you have trouble sleeping at night and whatever, you know. It's just like, this is an awful situation. I've never seen anything like it before. And I'd like for it to be gone, you know, and the sun to come out again, rather than this gloomy cloud of this stupid disease hanging over all of our heads, you know. Anyway, give me a thumbs up, and we'll catch you guys in the next show. Bye-bye.